Welcome back, everyone, to a Covert Narcissist's world. So I've taken a few days I've taken a week actually, to think about how I wanted to proceed with this. I started by just telling you the story of, the abuse, starting with the most recent in December. And after I did the last video, I had some questions come up for myself. I started to think about how I can actually incorporate the concepts of covert narcissism, the traits of covert narcissism, all of the crazy making, this thing is bad. All of the crazy, this is a bad Mandarin, all of the crazy making behavior. And what was happening was I was having flashback memories when I would be out jogging, or when I'm taking a shower, or when I'm listening to a podcast, or when I'm on a break at work, or whatever, falling asleep at night. So over the last week, I've kept a couple pieces of paper nearby so that I could take notes and just jot down the notes of all of the little things that I was remembering and experiencing in relation to different traits of covert narcissism. Because being in an abusive relationship with a covert narcissist is so confusing, and because grasping and actually getting a hold of covert narcissistic abuse in a large macro concept way, where you can really just take one look at it and go, oh yeah, it doesn't exist, which is part of what makes it so frustrating to share what it's like to be in an abusive relationship with a covert narcissist with somebody. It's like trying to catch a ghost. I basically left us in June in terms of the chronology of the relationship. In July, the physical attack happened. And right before that physical attack happened, John and I went on a trip to Colorado for, 4 days. And I actually didn't think about that trip this last week in terms of memories and things that he did. But it's kind of funny. It's interesting. If you've ever been with a covert narcissist, I don't know if you've experienced this before, but my experience was I really didn't enjoy being out with him. It turned out what's kind of interesting is the space in which I enjoyed being with him became smaller and smaller over time, because I would realize okay, so going out with him isn't enjoyable. Okay, so going on a trip with him isn't enjoyable. I mean, there were moments that were enjoyable, right? Oh, going on the day trip with him to a hot spring. Guess what? Won't do that again. That wasn't enjoyable. All sorts of things that, you do outside of the house that you realize is not enjoyable with this person. Going out to dinner at restaurants. There were some bad experiences with his entitlement, where he acted out at restaurants. Not enjoyable experience. And other than going for a walk together, even going to the farmer's market was not enjoyable for all sorts of reasons that seem silly and petty when you talk about them individually. But when you're with a covert narcissist, all of these things, this is your day in, day out life, living with somebody who has to have complete control over the situation, even though they will say that they're not controlling, and they don't. and that you are actually the one that needs to be in control. It took me a really long time to realize that all of the things that he was constantly saying about me were his traits that I believe somebody pointed out to him at some point in time. I'm pretty convinced that somebody at some point in time, some romantic partner, I can't imagine that he's made it this far in life without hearing this stuff. Somebody has pointed out to him that, what he's doing. And he preemptively, got those strikes in there for me and set me up, so to speak, to, be the one in his eyes to display those qualities. For example, one of the traits that he imbued on me, which I actually believe was one of his traits, he always told me that I was in need of attention. Mostly it was in need of attention from men. But in general, that I needed attention. So, oh my God, other memories come up as I talk about a memory. One thing at a time, brain. But yeah, so a covert narcissist, if you've ever been with one of their traits, a very strong trait in them, is that they themselves need attention. And when they don't receive the attention that they so desperately need to validate their sense of self, because it's all external and they don't have one, so it's very flimsy. If they're not getting that attention, they will look to find some way to turn something around, to make a stink. They'll use gaslighting. This is when their tactics come in. They will, basically sabotage whatever the situation is in order to get the attention that they need. And you can think of like a child who's acting out, right, in that sense too. And the act, more often than not, like the actual act of acting out is their attention-seeking behavior, because they have a need that's not being met. So for a covert narcissist, this survival tactic, this coping mechanism that's really damaging and negative and damaging to other people, doesn't just affect them, comes out, in this instance where they're not feeling that they're getting the attention that they deserve. And believe me, they feel they deserve a lot of attention all the time and for nothing. And if you're their partner, if you're their romantic partner, if you're their one, well, believe me, you're going to exhaust yourself, drain yourself, trying to fill them up all of the time, trying to prop them up, lift them up. Listen, I got a sense that this was a need of his very, very early on, and I felt it was a genuine need early on. Even though at the baseline level, it comes from a place of genuine need, it's so distorted and messed up over the years that it's no longer from a place of healthy, genuine need. So because that covert narcissist has so much need for attention, and because they are a covert narcissist, they're not going to just overtly walk out into the world and demand it in the same way. Now, some of their behaviors may show that in terms of them demanding attention from the world and demanding whatever from the world and a sense of security in that sense of who they are. However, that's part of their full self a lot of the times. And they're more often than not relying on you to be the one who's always having to lift them up. And because I got a sense of this early on, like before he had to display too much of it, and because I also thought it was coming from a very genuine place early on, I was often, and this is part of, some codependency traits, I was often preemptively offering support emotionally to lift him up. I was preemptively, you know, telling him things, saying things to him about how wonderful he is and this and that. And I also didn't realize this is interesting, like looking back, because he would often tell me things like, in those moments of attention seeking, he would say things to me like, oh, well, I'm just, you know, I don't know why you want to be with me. I'm just a guy, you know, with a room. I'm just a, you know, a dude with a room. Oh no, a loser with a room. That's what he said. I'm just a loser with a room. Or I'd tell him how handsome he was, and he's like, no, you know, stop. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And how wonderful he was, and no, I'm not. And, you know, of course, sometimes he would say, you know, what a bad guy he was, and especially after abuse, you know, when he did come around and apologize again, just how awful he was, he would say. So, but he would sometimes just say these things, not around abuse, not during times of abuse. Sometimes he would just say these things when he wasn't getting enough attention, basically. So here's another example of him needing attention. This one night we went out, and there were a couple different things that happened during this night out that exemplifies different things, you know, related to being with a covert narcissist. However, in terms of him needing attention, I could tell you that we didn't go out very often together, and he, I believe, was very used to like going out by himself and doing his own little thing. And I think he had his own little like routine, because he had his little places he would go, the bars that he was used to, and I was essentially getting in the way of that. I was fucking that up by going out with him. I could feel his discomfort. I could cut his discomfort with a freaking knife. We had been to a couple of places, maybe one or two. I actually wanted us to go home after the first place, because I know at this point how he is with alcohol, but he wanted to stay out. So we went to another place, and we were sitting down having our drink. This was after we got our drink, and I was actually pretty interested in standing and dancing with him and, you know, being physically close to him. But he kept kind of trying to push me away, and he said something like, oh, we're making people uncomfortable. And I thought, no, we're not. Like, everyone's all over each other here. It's a bar of young people in an underground establishment. Like, it's not even above the ground. We had to go downstairs into a dark dungeon to enter this bar. I don't think us, you know, being physically close, we're not like grinding on each other. And even if we were, you know, who cares? Everyone's down there dancing. So, okay, we're making people uncomfortable, he says. So we sit down, and we're just sitting there, and he's not talking to me, and I can just feel this tension thick in the room because of him next to us. And there's just like no effort whatsoever on his part to converse with me, who he's there with. And I'm, you know, my body's turned to him. I'm being open and available to him, and he is turning away from me towards other people who have their backs to him because they are in conversation with each other, and he's trying to get into their conversation. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, why am I even out with you? So this is what he's doing. We're sitting there, and you know, I can feel how badly he just wants to socialize with other people, which is fine, but he obviously wants to do it on his own, and he doesn't want to do it in an organic way that includes me. And he's like pushing himself into people's conversations, and they are uncomfortable, and you can see that they're uncomfortable. And a couple of times they were like, you know, one or two that he got were like, okay, yeah, and like walked away and left, and he's nice to meet you, have a good night. So we leave this place. We go across the street or down one street and into another place. We were not at this place long. At least I wasn't. I went into the bathroom. I'm going to put a shot of myself up from that night here. Because I looked miserable. And I was. And I came out of that bathroom, and this is when he decides to sabotage the evening completely. Abuse begins, and I'm pretty sure he did this because it was one of his attention-seeking behaviors, moments. As a covert narcissist, you know, he was not enjoying his evening out. I was pretty much in the way of his evening out. And he had gotten to the point in his evening out, because our evening out started together as our evening out. We were going to one place to listen to some music and to dance, to have a drink with his friend and his girlfriend. We were not going out for the whole night into the next day. That was not the plan. We were not going from bar to bar to drink. However, he decided that that is what we were going to do. And because he had decided that, you know, he was not experiencing it the way he had been used to, which meant he was not out having fun, getting the attention he enjoyed, because I was in the way. So, at this point, he's had enough. You can see him ramping up emotionally, looking for a way to sabotage the rest of the evening. Well, it didn't take him long. So he finds this guy who's very nice and willing to engage with us. And so he's talking to us, and you can see John just kind of starting to, you know, instigate a little bit, but he's seeming like very nice. He convinces me to accept a drink from this fellow who offered us both a drink, but John declined. And then I said, no. And John said, no, have a drink. So I said, okay, and I accepted. As soon as the drink came and this fellow handed me the drink, well, that was it. It was on. John set me up. He set me up so he could sabotage the rest of the evening. Covert narcissist. At that point, he was like, oh, look at you, whore, said, accepting a drink, blah, blah, blah. And I could just feel him ramping up emotionally. Now, he didn't get up and start yelling this in my face. He's sitting there calmly. Oh, look at you, you know, accepting a drink from this guy, blah, blah, blah. And why don't you go fuck him? Why don't you go be with him now? Why don't you go fuck him? You need all this attention and blah, 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 blah. I almost lost it, because this is the same antagonistic abuse that I received from him over and over again, or had received from him over and over again. I slammed that drink down on the bar, and I stormed out of the bar, and I literally ran home to his house. That's where my car was and everything of mine for the evening. Ran there, 2 miles, a little less than 2 miles, in boots that were not made for running, and a dress. Yeah. Pretty sure I had pants on them. Great. So he accomplished what he wanted. He sabotaged the rest of the evening. He abused me, and he got rid of me so that he could have the evening out that he wanted, so that he could get the attention that he wanted, that he so desperately needed. What did I do? Well, I went back to his place, took a shower, tried to calm down, packed my things, Was too drunk to drive, so wasn't going to drive. Tried to lay down, shut my eyes. Couldn't text him because his phone was there. But he did tell me when he came home at like 3 or 4 in the morning how awesome the night was and that I should have stayed out because it was so much fun. Oh, and by the way, he couldn't trust me because I was the one who left. I left the scene. I left the bar. So who knows where I went that night? I could have been off fucking somebody, you know. So he can't trust me. He can't trust anything that happened after that moment because I left. Oh yeah, I left. The abuse. Do you see what you're dealing with? So, there's an example of a really fun night out with a covert narcissist who tells you that you have secret behavior when they themselves have their own little secret behavior routines and stuff when they go out, and tells you that you're attention seeking, but will sabotage the entire evening so that they can get the attention that they want. From strangers, from absolute strangers. But if I were to talk to a stranger, oh, God, Morgan, you whore. Look at all the attention that you need from people. Oh, you just need so much attention. Well, there's one of the many. Look at this piece of paper. Offering me to accept a drink that was being offered to both of us. So offering that up to me, well, it was a trick, and he used it against me. As soon as I accepted the offer and I had the drink in my hand, he turned around and he flipped that against me. He turned it right around against me. He used it entirely against me. That that I needed attention, that I needed to accept this drink, that I was, the whore that needs the attention, that wants the guy, that blah, 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 blah. That is on purpose. That was done on purpose. And that is a way of gaining power over your victim and control. And he would sit there and say to me, months prior, I remember back in May, because this was an incident that happened in September I told you about, but back in May, he had said that he's not controlling. What your covert narcissistic partner teaches you over time, the way they treat you, well, they teach you that it's not safe to talk to them. They teach you that it's not safe to be emotionally open with them, that it's not safe to be vulnerable with them. They teach you that it's not safe to be yourself with them. And they teach you not to talk to them. They think they're teaching you so much about how to be a better person, as good as they are, but really they're just showing you how emotionally unsafe they are to talk to at all. And that is one of the saddest parts about covert narcissism. They don't have the self-reflective abilities to see how hurt they are at the hands of their own making at this point, and how much they hurt others. It's the saddest thing. It's pretty much the saddest thing I can think of, to be a person whom others don't feel emotionally safe around. I really can't think of something much sadder than that. I mean, I can, but that's a pretty darn sad one. I would not want to be that person.